Hey everybody, to today's topic, and it's changing the subject of a formula. Now we're back on topics for both foundation and higher. There's a very clear delineation between what is foundation and what's higher, and after the first two parts of the video you can stop off your foundation and go. It's the two options that you will get, and then you can continue on. Now I will lose some of you at some stage, the higher ones I will lose you, but as I was saying, some during the week. The important thing is realize at what point I do lose you, so when you come into class, you know at what point I'll lose you, and you can go away and work on that. Okay, and it gives something to do rather than starting from the start every week. So change the subjective formula. What does it mean, or where does it change from foundation to higher? So in these ones, the subject appears only once. What is the subject? Well, in this video, or in this example, s equals d over t, which is speed equals distance over time. S is the subject of the formula. When we say the subject, it's the letter that's equal to everything else. So if S equals everything else, that's the subject because it's on its own. There's no numbers attached to it. There's no other letters. It's just S equals everything else. If we wanted to make T the subject, we'd have to rearrange the formula using the rules of algebra to do it, and kind of the rules of BODMAS as well. Okay, so we want to make T the subject, so we're going to need to get T equals everything else. Now the first problem that we'll have here is that T is on the bottom. Right? We need to get rid of the T off the bottom. So what we should do, we're going to move the T over to the other side. And over here, it's divided by T over here. So when we move it across the other side, it does the opposite of what it's doing beforehand. So instead of divided by T, it becomes multiplied by T. And that gives us TS equals D. Now, we want to get T equals on its own, so we need to move the S away from the T. If we do that, it's T multiplied by S on that side. If we move it over, it's going to become divided by S, and that gives us T equals D over S, and that's changing the subject of the formula. So it's using all the rules we were using beforehand. In an awful lot of cases, we'll be using figures, but if something moves over to the other side, it does the opposite of what it was doing beforehand. What about this? Y equals 6x plus 4. What's the subject of the formula in this question? Y is the subject because it's y equals everything else. We want to make x the subject. The order in which you do this is very important, and it's the reverse of BODMAS, and there's two ways to think about it. I've seen some ways where it says the thing that's furthest away from the x you deal with first, and that can get a bit confusing. What will actually happen as you do examples of this is that you'll get a feel for what order it moves in. But the way I generally explain it is, if I give you the value of x equals to 2, what way would you do that sum? Well, if I give you x equals 2, you would do 6 times 2 is 12 and add the 4. Right? So you do 6 times that and then add the 4. And that's what you would do. When we're moving over to the other side, you do those operations, you move them in the reverse of what you did before. So the last thing that we did is the first thing that we'll move. Okay, so the last thing we would do is add the 4. So we're going to move the plus 4 over to the other side. If we move a plus 4 to the other side, it becomes a minus 4. Right? I'm saying it says the C here because this is y equals ms plus c, which again some of you have recognized, some of you haven't, but we're subtracting the 4 over the other side. So we've got y minus 4 equals 6x. Then we'll have 6x equals y minus 4. We need to adjust x on its own, so we need to take the 6 multiplied by x, take it multiplied by 6 over the other side, so it's divided by the 6, and you'll get y minus 4 over 6 equals x, and that is your answer. You can change it around so the subject's to the left, so it'll be x equals y minus 4 over 6. And that's as far as most of the foundation ones go. Those two rules together are the things that will keep you right. Now, for those that are higher, it's going to get really tricky. And it really takes you to know what you're doing with your algebra, and it takes an awful lot of practice, and I will lose you at some stage. Here's something that's a bit more complicated. We've got v equals a third pi r squared h. V is the subject. We want to make h the subject. So we've got all this to move over to the other side. Now, as you notice, it's all multiplied together. So in actual fact, it doesn't matter what order you do it in. But I'll take it from left to right. I've got a third here. If I move the divided by 3 or the third over the other side, it does the opposite of what I was doing beforehand. So I'll multiply by the 3 instead of dividing by the 3. And that would give me 3v equals pi r squared h. We want a h on its own, so we're going to move the pi r squared over the other side. What is the pi r squared doing to the h? It's multiplying by it. If we move it to the other side, it's going to become divided by it, and you'll get h equals 3v over pi r squared. Subject to left, just flip it around, and h equals 3v equals pi r squared over pi r squared. Right? Not too bad at the moment. What if we wanted to make r the subject, however? Okay, same process goes along. We would have v equals a third, so we'd multiply by the 3 to start off with. We'd still get 3v equals pi r squared h, right? The r is squared in this case. We can't touch it at the moment. So we're going to move the pi and the h over. And again, the r squared is multiplied by the pi and the h. So we need to divide by the pi and h, and that gives us that. So we get 3v over pi h equals r squared. If we're going to remove the squared, if I bring a squared over the other side, what's the opposite of squaring something? Well, it's the square root. So if I move the squared over the other side, we will then get the square root of 3v over pi h equals to r. And that's about B level. We're going to go on to A, an A star level, because the subject's going to appear twice. And we're going to use the things we've been doing the past couple of weeks, factorizing, to help us out. Right. In this subject, we want to make x the subject. Or in this question, we want to make x the subject. There's nothing actually the subject at the moment in the equation because it's tyx equals t minus 7x. First thing we're going to need to do is get all our x terms together. So to do that, we're going to need to move the minus 7x over to the other side. And to do that, the minus 7x will become plus 7x. So it will give us tyx plus 7x equals to t. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take x out as a factor, because that's a common factor between these two terms here. They both have x's. If I take x out as a factor, I'm going to divide both terms by x. If I divide tyx by x, the x and x cancel, and I'm left with ty. If I divide 7x by x, I'm going to get 7. So it's going to be x upon ty plus 7 equals t. And if I just want to get x on its own, x is multiplied by this bracket of ty plus 7. We're going to divide by the ty plus 7 because that's the opposite of multiplying by, and you would get x equals t over ty plus 7. And that's pretty hard. It's pretty hard for just about anybody to do. But in some ways it's really kind of satisfying because you've taken something that looked like this and then I nearly even made it more complicated looking, if you know what I mean. And it's still right, if you know what I mean. I just find that incredibly satisfying, especially if I told you that's what we're aiming for. Can you see how we get there? What about this? Right, subject appears twice. So the subject appears only once, and this is going to get really tough. If we have something like this, right, we're going to make t the subject. Now, to make t the subject, we've got t in the bottom line, but it's also an adding sum here in the right. Now, what you're going to do is we're going to multiply across by t. Okay, we need to get the t up in the top line. If the subject's in the bottom line, the first thing you must do, and that's the one change the rule, is you have to get it in the top line. So we're going to multiply everything by t the whole way across. So if I multiply p by t, I get tp. If I multiply 3 over t by t, I get 3t over t. The two t's cancel, I'm left with 3. And if I multiply 7 over r by t, I get 7t over r, which looks something like that. Now you can see that the subject appears twice. The easiest thing to do in the next case, we've still got a fraction in the bottom line here. It's going to cause some problems. We're going to multiply across by the r as well. And if I multiply the tp by the r, we get tpr. If I multiply the 3 by the r, we get 3r. If I multiply the 7t over r by r, we get 7t r over r. And r over r cancels to give us just 7t. And we will get something like that. And I dare say I will need to work through these on the board with you when we get in. Now these, to be fair, these come up so infrequently. It is, it's not even worth talking about, right? They could get even harder, but I'm going to stop there because that's about as hard as they can possibly get. And I think I would need to go through it with you on the board as to what we're doing. That is the standard that the A star kind of things go by. Once you get to there, you group your two t terms together. So you bring your plus 7t over to the other side to be minus 7t. So TPR minus 7t equals 3r, and it becomes exactly like the previous example, where you take t out as a factor, and you're left with PR minus 7. It's t multiplied by PR minus 7. We take that over to the other side and divide by it, and we get that. Okay, so a short video this week. You might want to watch it a couple of times for the last couple, and I'll throw a couple of questions down for you in those if that's okay. Try them, and bring the problems with you to class that you've got. You're bound to have some, because even though I give you 4 examples, there were 4 very distinct and hard examples, if you know what I mean. So I'll try and stagger the questions that I'm giving you so they get progressively harder, so to speak. But good luck. I'll see you in class on Tuesday. Bye.
But long as there are stars above you, you never need to doubt it. I'll make you so sure about it. God only knows what I'd be without you. Without you. And if you should ever leave me, though life would still go on, believe me, the world could show nothing to me. So what good would living do me? God only knows what I'd be without you. Do 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 God only knows what I'd be without you. Oh, I may not always love you, but long as there are stars above you, you never need to doubt it. I'll make you so sure about it. God only knows what I'd be